When Zak and I first decided to build here, the first thing we built was the garden. I needed it for my sanity, and he knew that. So life was better because I had a garden. That was about over 20 years ago. I gardened and was a gardener, farmer, landscaper for years, and I realized the most important thing about that is building soil. That's really what you're growing, is soil. So that's been the focus of my garden, mostly, is always building soil. And now, you know, these 20 years later, I have some nice soil in spots. So the garden grows way better than it used to in the early days, but it's still a spring garden. It's shady. I don't get a lot of sun. I get a late afternoon sun. And so I'm able to grow a lot of greens, and I focus on peas and greens and flowers, brassicas, things like that. And then I love flowers, as you'll see when you look through the garden. They're an important part of feeding ourselves. We grow most of our own food, and we have for years. And I have a resistance to going to the grocery store. I always made do with what was in the garden. That was it. I love walking out and saying, what's for dinner? And then thinking about dinner next week, oh, that'll be ready next week, we'll have that, or tomorrow. We just eat out of our garden year round, and it's a big part of our lives, is the food in our garden feeds us. My interest in art started in high school. I discovered drawing and painting. My intention was to major in art, but I walked into college, into the university, and got freaked out by all the artists and turned and ran the other direction and went into environmental studies. And then I didn't really pick up art again. I'd take classes every once in a while, but I got into basket weaving in my 20s, around 20. I took a basket weaving class, and then I haven't stopped basket weaving since then. It's something just that nourishes my soul. I love going out and finding plants, materials, and weaving with them. And then it just art became incorporated into my life, into my garden, into my working with plants, my home. I discovered stone about 10 years ago. I was ill, I was recovering, and I had one of those, you know, reflecting on my life moments, and I realized I really wanted to do sculpture, and I hadn't ever explored that. And I looked up in the Lopez paper, and there was an ad for stone sculpting classes. So I called Tamara Buchanan, and as soon as I was strong enough, I went over her house, and I have to say that day I picked up the chisel, I never put it down again. I still make baskets in the spring and things like that, but this year I started incorporating the two. Today I was working on a piece of limestone. It's a golden limestone, and I really enjoy working limestone with hand tools. It just flows really easily, and it becomes meditative with the hammer and chisel, and just shaping and guiding and going into that stone. And there's so much depth and history in the stone, because the limestone is from deep in the old oceans, and so you find shells, and sometimes you get smells revealed when you knock off a chunk. I'm making a face. Sometimes I have a vision on a piece. This piece, I'm just carving it. It's kind of revealing itself. And that happens with me with faces. I've done a few, and I might start to get a feeling of what the person might be that had this face, or something, I don't even know. So that's how I'm doing this piece. It's very intuitive as I'm carving. A few years ago, I did a trip to Italy, and I came back with a lot of stone, mostly marble, but other varieties of stone. So I have a lot of big chunks of marble that I'm looking forward to tackling in the near future. Some of the stone I find around or out on a trip, and we'll bring stuff home. I got my husband trained now. If he sees a cool rock at work or out on a hike, he'll bring it in for me. I am inspired by nature and my experience of the feminine in my life. And that's mostly what I notice is what comes through my stonework, is those two qualities sometimes combined and sometimes separate. And my world, the island, living outside so much, working with plants and trees inspire me a lot as well. I got inspired to make these nests with eggs in them from watching all these trees coming down around the island. and all this clearing and all this developing. And I started thinking, it's really disturbing to me. And I started thinking about how can I express this? Like, I don't want to hold this in. I don't want to be angry about it. How can I express this? And I thought about habitat in our homes, and I realized people want homes, and that's why they're doing it. And I thought, who do we share our homes with, and what are our habitats? Like, our habitats are more than just me living in my house. There's all these other beings that are impacted by me living where I'm living. So I thought of the form of a nest as a home space, a habitat that we all can relate to. And so I started building these nests and creating these eggs for each nest. And then in the process, I realized that we're all different too, and we're in these nests. And I asked the question of, who else does your habitat impact? Who else is involved in your home? Whose home is it as well as yours? It kind of melded into we're all different, and we're all different colors, and we're different sizes and shapes, and we have different needs, and we have different focuses. And so the different sizes and shapes of eggs kind of reflect our differences in the world, and that we share the same habitat together, that we are still living in the same home.